This is my first video, sharing my screen and trying to do it this way. Let's get started. We're going to get pretty zoomed in on some certain topics, and we're going to get pretty zoomed out and look at some overarching structures. So just know we're going to do that. It's also going to help if you are watching this as well as listening to it. This week, FDA approved the Pfizer, so it's no longer under the experimental provision. It is officially approved. What does that mean, though? And can we trust the FDA? They claim that the public can be very confident that this new jab meets the high standards for safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing quality the FDA requires of an approved product. But that is a claim that I have a hard time accepting, and I'll show you why. First of all, NPR put out this article 5 years ago about how there's a revolving door from the FDA to the industries that they regulate. Okay, so here's a look at the methods of their study. It's a little informal. They tracked FDA reviewers through LinkedIn and PubMed, and it's a pretty small sample size. So they only tracked 55 FDA reviewers in this particular field. Hematology is the study of blood and blood disorders, and oncology is the study of cancer and tumors and stuff. Okay, through this 9-year period. So it's a pretty small sample size, and the smaller the sample size in your scientific study, the less accurate it's going to be. So this might not be the best indication of the data behind the revolving door between FDA and its industries, but it's a good look. Because what they found is that 57% of those who left the FDA during that time went to go work or consult for the biopharmaceutical industry. That's a clear conflict of interest. And they discussed that, but at the end, it basically concludes with letting the FDA speak. I don't think this article is hard enough on the FDA. I think they let the FDA kind of defend themselves and use their double speak to kind of say, we don't advantage any company, organization, or individual. That's the end of the article. Thanks, NPR. And it's funny too, because look, this is health news from NPR. It's called Shots. So is there a conflict of interest between NPR? Like, could we look at their funding and see who has controlling interests in this news media outlet? Because part of my interest in exploring health is, what does health mean? And for NPR, they link it directly to Shots. So this made me go, okay, how do other people define health? So I searched it. I always use DuckDuckGo first because they're way more transparent than Google. They have different algorithms, and so their search results are different. I said, define health, DuckDuckGo, and we get this. The overall condition of an organism at a given time. Soundness, especially of body or mind, freedom from disease or abnormality, a condition of optimal well-being. Okay, decent enough definitions. I then asked Google, who is my source on the mainstream narrative, because they're talk about conflict of interest. They have controlling interests as far as people in top places who have a narrative and an agenda. Look at their definitions. The state of being free from illness or injury, a person's mental or physical condition, and used to express friendly feelings towards one's companions before drinking. That is why would they include that in a definition of health? Why would they tie it to drinking alcohol? And that is hilarious. Also interesting to notice the difference between this part of the definition, a person's mental or physical condition, compare that to what DuckDuckGo says, the overall condition of an organism. So it's not limited to humans or people, but Google's is. It's just interesting to see how they want to direct our perception of certain topics, concepts. So again, Google, free from illness or injury, and DuckDuckGo, soundness, especially of body or mind. And then I looked it up on Wikipedia just to see what people are calling health these days. A state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. Good. I like the idea of a state of complete wellness, but who decides what social well-being is, right? As far as I'm concerned, if you have mental health and balance and well-being, you don't want to harm anybody, and you just operate from the do no harm principle. But social well-being, I would assume that would be the same. You don't harm other people, but this has a way of kind of spinning it into make sure you're following the herd, make sure you're not sticking out, make sure you're not an extremist, okay, or being a dangerous person by challenging social norms. So that's really interesting. I mean, Wikipedia is obviously a establishment mouthpiece. Okay. Anyways, now that we just kind of like defined health and saw that different organizations spin it their own way, right? So the World Health Organization wants you to kind of fall in line socially. Google wants you just to go drinking with your friends, okay, and not think about health of maybe animals, you know, just kind of limit it to people, and not look beyond your absence of illness or injury. So anyways, this seems like a little more unbiased to me, a little more transparent. Okay, moving on. The increasing influence of Big Pharma on FDA drug advisory committees. All right, many of these committee members receive kickbacks from the pharma companies whose drug they approved. Okay, it's actually easy to see that. Just look at certain people, right? Scott Gottlieb was the head of the FDA under Trump, and he constantly had to recuse himself from different planning because of his financial ties to the big pharmaceutical companies of that day. Okay? The Breast Cancer Action Group, they opposed Scott Gottlieb. They published this when he was appointed. And they point out all his conflicts of interest, right? All these pharmaceutical companies, in addition to the ones we just looked at, he's receiving money from. Okay? And he works on their board. Okay? Like, let's go to his LinkedIn. Check this out. As soon as he left the FDA's commissioner, April 2019, very next month, he's on the board of directors of Pfizer. Okay? 2019. Less than a year away from Pfizer making billions of dollars on their new technology. Okay, and there's more, you know, there's more news you can read about Gottlieb and the FDA and his conflict of interest, all right? Just one more second into Scott Gottlieb's career, all right? Look, he was the member of the policy board for the Society of Hospital Medicine. Okay, he was in the board of directors of the second biggest pharmaceutical company in Japan. Board of directors of American Pathology Partners. Okay, so he makes policy for these regulatory agencies and independent groups, but he's also getting paid from these drug companies. GlaxoSmithKline, Gradalis, Medavante, Tolera Pharma, okay, Aptiv, makes policy for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I wonder how many FDA drugs they support for the diseases that they're trying to fight. Okay, board of directors for Bravo Health, Molecular Insight Pharmaceuticals. He's been in the FDA for a long time. Our current FDA commissioner, Janet Woodcock, she's been in the game for a while. She began her career in the FDA in '86. Okay, and then she started working as the director of the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, overseeing the center's work that is the world's gold standard for drug approval and safety. So this is from the FDA's own website. They're calling themselves the gold standard for drug approval and safety. And we've already pointed out how there's plenty of conflicts of interests and opportunities for corruption. Okay? Janet Woodcock was the person who approved OxyContin and fentanyl, the two big drugs that drove the opioid epidemic, which is still happening, by the way. All right? We're about 20 years into this opioid epidemic, and it's really bad. Okay, and there's just some details around certain groups asked the FDA to rescind its endorsement of dispensing oxy for chronic pain, because that's what leads to these addictions and epidemics of painkillers. So they updated the label on oxy for the management of moderate to severe pain when a continuous around-the-clock analgesic is needed for an extended period of time. A lot of people are in chronic pain, and if they see this on their drug insert, they're going to say, well, looks good for me. Little do they know they're becoming addicted to opioids, heroin derivatives, basically. So just do some reading, guys. This is a rabbit hole, and I'm kind of just shining light on the very, very surface layer of it. Hidden conflicts, pharma payments to FDA advisors after drug approvals spark ethical concerns. Okay, and this is a cool article from sciencemag.org, because you can see they have graphs that show you the flow of money from the manufacturers of certain drugs that got approved and other drug companies to FDA advisors. Okay, so let's scroll down a bit. Oh, and not to mention the lawsuits that these drug companies have to pay involving alleged improprieties in the company's clinical trials and improper marketing. We see that everywhere, but that stuff gets swept under the rug. After the Seroquel vote, which approved this antipsychotic drug Seroquel, even though it's linked to sudden cardiac death, Christopher Granger, an FDA advisor, made bank. Okay. Oh, only a little bit was from AstraZeneca, though. You know, you might say, well, he's an FDA advisor. Look how much money he's getting from these drug companies. Like, it's insane. And if you scroll down further, you can actually pick a drug and see how much people are making. Oh, wow. How much FDA advisors are making from these drug companies. Okay. Science Mag. Now, we talked about the revolving door between the FDA and the drug companies they regulate. We talked about individuals and their track records of having one foot in a regulatory agency and policy board and the other foot in drug companies. Now, let's just go through some of the food additives the FDA has approved. Okay, first of all, 3,000 out of the 10,000 chemicals on the FDA's list of approved food additives have never been reviewed for safety by the FDA. This is because they were grandfathered in since they were widely regarded as safe before 1958, when the Food Additives Amendment was passed. So 30% of the chemicals on the FDA's list of approved food additives have never been reviewed for safety. Does that sound to you like they can truly guarantee the safety and effectiveness of those 3,000 products? High fructose corn syrup. We know how devastating that is as a product by itself, but it turns out a lot of it is contaminated with mercury. Okay, and when a former FDA scientist tries to report this finding, she gets no response and no action by the FDA. Cool, sounds responsible to me. By the way, the word responsible is how able you are to respond. Response able. So your response to certain things in the world reflects your level of responsibility. FDA's approved glyphosate. They maintain that it's safe to consume, but we know it's not. It's purely toxic. Look at the lawsuits surrounding Roundup, which is the common product name that contains glyphosate that's poisoning people and killing them, giving them extreme disorders if they use it for a long period of time. The FDA's approved nitrates and nitrites. Presence of nitrates and nitrates in food is associated with an increased risk of gastrointestinal cancer and this blood disorder that I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. Okay, all 9 U.S. approved food dyes raise health concerns of varying degrees. Okay, hypersensitivity reactions. They're toxic, artificial colorings, yet they're approved because the drug companies need to move this stuff. Artificial flavorings encompasses 700 different synthetic chemicals. So when you see that term on your ingredients list, it's an umbrella term for hundreds of chemicals, none of which we know the names of. Apparently the FDA doesn't think it's necessary that we know what's particularly in your food. Aspartame. You know, there was a big support for aspartame for a while because it's not sugar, but it has all these crazy health effects. Okay? Sodium benzoate, if combined with vitamin C, can convert to benzene. And benzene is a carcinogen that can cause cancer in humans. A lot of the hand sanitizers we've been seeing lately contain benzene. So, your obsession with sanitizing your hands might be making you sick. Okay, sodium benzoate approved by the FDA. BHA and BHT approved by the FDA. Brominated vegetable oil approved by the FDA. And bromine is poisonous. Acesulfame potassium, I don't know how to say that. Possible side effects include lung cancer, thymus gland tumors in rats, as well as leukemia and breast cancer. I wonder if the FDA regulators in the oncology programs know about that. RBGH. They've approved that in 93, even though it's banned in many, many places around the world. RBGH is a recombinant bovine growth hormone, and now you'll see RBGH-free cows, meaning they recognize the health risk and they label their products as not containing it. However, it's still approved by the FDA. More toxic food ingredients and additives to avoid. Okay, this goes over a lot of the products we just talked about, but how about propylene glycol, aka antifreeze, approved by the FDA to go in your food. Butane, approved by the FDA to go in your food. It's a known carcinogen. Okay? Propyl gallate, shown to cause cancer in rats. Banned in some countries, safe according to the FDA. Polysorbate 60, cancer in lab animals. Polysorbate 80, also in the Johnson & Johnson. Okay, may cause cancer based on animal test data. No human data found. Because if they actually did legitimate human studies, they would know this stuff ain't good for you. And then aluminum. This is a preservative that's allowed in a lot of drugs and beauty products and foods. The studies on aluminum toxicity, go check them out. They're pretty crazy, and we're seeing a lot of the dementia and Alzheimer's is being linked to heavy aluminum levels these days. So, not to mention mass die-offs of bee colonies and like dementia symptoms in other animals. Lack of science used to be an excuse, but now we have the research showing how bad this stuff is, okay? Artificial sweeteners, alright, all approved by the FDA. I'm not sure if agave nectar is that bad, but toxic artificial food colorings. Toxic, toxic, toxic. And then here's a little article about BPA and aspartame in particular, how bad those are. You get the idea. Oh yeah, here's some information on glyphosate. This is on a forum, but it's very well researched. And if you search this up, you can read it and click these links to kind of follow up and learn more. Cool. So now let's move to drugs, okay? Because FDA administers the safety and testing and approval of drugs. This, for the Harvard University Center for Ethics, published an opinion article called Why the FDA Cannot Be Trusted. Okay, he makes some pretty lofty claims, like 53,000 excess hospitalizations and 2,400 excess deaths occur in the United States every week among people taking properly prescribed drugs to be healthier. 1 in every 5 drugs approved ends up causing serious harm. That is huge! So I have to do more follow-up to see if this is true. And this was published 8 years ago. But we do know that prescription drugs cause unnecessary death. So, and now let's get into the category of drugs that were recalled. This means that they were at one time approved, and then they realized, uh-oh, take it off the market. This is actually hurting people. And some of these drugs were on the market for just 1 year. Some were on the market for 35 years. Okay. But they were like, it causes liver damage. Let's recall that. Okay, this was on the market for 1 year. It caused 4 deaths, 8 liver transplants, and 12 cases of severe liver damage because of wrongful prescription. They took it longer than it was supposed to. So why isn't the FDA helping doctors prescribe these drugs for the right time frames? I'm not going to go into all these. If you ever watch the FX show Dave about Lil Dicky, and created by Lil Dicky, Accutane is a theme in that show because he wants to control his acne and the acne on his back. So he's obsessed with this drug Accutane, and it doesn't work because he eats like shit. Okay. Recall due to its increased risk of birth defects, miscarriage, premature deaths among pregnant women, as well as suicidal ideation and inflammatory bowel disease. That is a vastly wide range of diseases that this can cause. Okay, more recalled drugs: Resolin, Raptiva, liver failure, death. Progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. Bad stuff. Okay, so the FDA is in the practice of approving drugs that are known to be harmful. Period. Here are some FDA-approved drugs that are not yet recalled. Okay, Lipitor/Crestor. Summary of manufacturer-listed side effects. So they know about this. This is from the manufacturer. Liver problems, elevated sugar levels, memory loss, confusion, tiredness, tendon problems, muscle and joint pain, feeling tired or weak, digestive issues, skin reactions, etc., etc., etc. And this is a drug for handling cholesterol. We know you can handle your cholesterol by eating more plant-based food, eating less hyper-refined grains, meat, oils, fats, and other products. We know you can handle cholesterol with plant-based diet. You don't need drugs with these insane side effects. Humira, used for arthritis, causes nausea, sleep disturbance, constipation, flatulence, vomiting. Enbrel, used for rheumatoid arthritis. Long list of side effects including serious viral, bacterial, and fungal infections. Oh, and multiple sclerosis. That's not a good one. Plavix, okay. Rituxan, I don't know how you say that. Used for cancer, lymphoma, etc., and arthritis. Side effects include death, liver failure, hives. Okay, Chantix, anti-smoking aid. Mental health problems, aggression, hostility, agitation. Seroquel, side effects, death. In elderly patients with dementia-related psychosis. Okay, this could be adding on to some problems people have already had, but they're not trying to address these problems with natural foods, detoxing. They're just trying to put more drugs on top. Okay, the birth control pill is potentially really problematic. Here are some of the side effects. Okay, Mirapix, hallucinations. Nice. Abilify, used for schizophrenia. Side effects include death from stroke, neuroleptic malignant syndrome, etc., etc., etc. Oh, diabetes is also a side effect. Alright. It just keeps going. And fentanyl, approved by the FDA. Now, I just want to make a little caveat about this one. You know, they'll use fentanyl in the operating room or emergency room, intensive care unit for acute injury and surgeries and anesthesia. So under the supervision of a professional and an expert who knows about dosage, fentanyl can be used for good purposes and it won't necessarily harm the patient. However, sometimes this gets prescribed to people, and then obviously we know about how street heroin gets cut with fentanyl and causes severe excess deaths among overdose victims. So those were some of the drugs that are still on the market. We've seen how toxic they can be. We've seen a lot of these drugs get recalled because of the terrible side effects. Not just listed, but known and reported. Last thing, since we're talking about drugs and this new FDA-approved drug, it's a jab. I'm not saying all jabs are unsafe. I think my main idea with this video is merely to pose the question, do you trust the FDA, given their track record, to tell us what's safe and what's not? Now, one word on jabs. If you think that all jabs are safe and effective, you probably haven't looked into this particular one called Gardasil, which is the HPV jab. Okay, it was approved in 2006 for females 9 to 26, and that was taken off the market, and then they introduced a new cocktail, a new drug called Gardasil 9, okay, which you need three doses of it, and each dose contains approximately 500 micrograms of aluminum. Okay? Oh, and polysorbate 80. Nice. But we know about the health effects associated with aluminum. Say what you will about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I know he's a Kennedy, and that means different things for different people. But he does come from a line of truth speakers who were censored in various ways. Let's just put it like that. He works for the Children's Health Defense. He's a lawyer, and he's really dedicated to holding these regulatory agencies accountable. So he's bringing them to court for 30 years, demanding transparency and better testing standards. So here's a good intro to this article. Many of the things I'm going to say today would be slanderous if they were not true. And if they're not true, then Merck should sue me. But Merck won't do that, and they won't do it because in the US, truth is an absolute defense against slander. Meaning, if any of these claims aren't true, come on and sue me, bro. But here's the thing, these claims are serious. Because, look at their clinical trials. They used inappropriate placebos. Okay, it's supposed to be just an inert saline placebo, but Merck used toxic aluminum adjuvant, AAHS, in a placebo. Okay, let me ask you, does that affect the validity of a scientific study if you mess with the placebo? And then they said that the placebo was an inert saline solution. So there's a book that discusses all this stuff. And then when they did Gardasil 9, it used original Gardasil as the placebo. You kidding me? Again, no inert saline placebo. And what that does is it masks the safety signals. So if you see rises in autoimmune disorder symptoms in both the placebo and the drug test, that doesn't register a safety signal. So that's why they don't use an inert saline. And the World Health Organization even states that using something other than an inert substance as a placebo creates a methodological disadvantage, and it may be difficult or impossible to assess safety properly without a true placebo. Okay, moving on to inappropriate inclusion-exclusion criteria. Basically, you were not allowed to participate in the trials if you had severe allergies, prior abnormal pap test results, over 4 lifetime sex partners, a history of immunological disorders, and other chronic illness, or reactions to ingredients, including aluminum, yeast, and benzonase, or a history of drug or alcohol abuse. Yet, Merck now recommends Gardasil for all of these groups. But there was no testing on these groups, so how do we know it's safe? We don't. Okay? He points out some inadequate monitoring techniques during these trials. Okay? Some more stats on cancer risk benefit, adverse effects on fertility. Okay? They never tested for fertility effects, but we're seeing it now play out in real time because of the people injured. Okay, polysorbate 80, like I mentioned earlier, is associated with infertility in animals. Why are we using that in our drugs? Is it really necessary? Okay, in 2015, Denmark opened 5 new HPV clinics to treat children injured by Gardasil. 1,300 cases flooded the clinic shortly after their opening. Do you think these people are joking, just going into these clinics and pretending like they have injuries? Jab injury is real. There's the reporting system that people can plug in their adverse reactions, which is underreported. We know it's underreported. And if you look at some of the VAERS data now, it's scary, guys. It's bad. I've had some people claim to me that VAERS is like fake news and not just stop looking at it. And my response is, no thanks. So anyways, there's some really good evidence in this article as to why this drug in particular is not what it is intended to be. Okay, regardless of if it's not good for you or not, it's more about, is this drug advertised in a transparent way? If they say it's safe and effective, yet the safety record disagrees with that, what are we to do? What is the FDA to do? Is it conceivable to you that the FDA overlooks important safety data? Now, I just want to show you and put you onto 2 books you can check out that highlight a little bit of the corruption in the pharmaceutical world. Okay, Rockefeller Medicine Men does a really good job of following philanthropy and what that actually is, and kind of how it drives social change and what the hidden agendas are behind corporate philanthropic donations, basically, and establishments of institutions of learning and of medicine. Carnegie Foundation is huge money going into public conceptions and public learning about science, drugs, medicine, all that stuff. So check out Rockefeller Medicine Men. That's a great book. Dope Inc. is a really good one as well. This one talks more about sort of the opium trade and how the banks are using this drug trade to just get more rich and consolidate more power. Because the drug trade fuels 2 main purposes. One is just channeling money back to the people at the top of the hierarchy. And 2, keeping people addicted and distracted in a mental state where it's much harder to ask questions about natural health and things like that. So it keeps us ignorant the more we're smoking and the more we're drinking and the more we're hooked on big pharma, guys. So anyways, check out these books if you want to learn more about the kind of big picture situation we're facing and some of the high level financiers of this stuff, because that's where it all traces back to. So this whole concern for health and a concern about the medical system and the healthcare system is really a concern for you and me, the common person, humans, humanity. We all want to see people thrive and do well, be healthy. I guess I'm just here to remind us that we're not going to do that through drugs. Okay, we're going to do that through our awareness, our lifestyle. The food we eat is a big one. Do not overlook that one. And don't underestimate the power of healing through food, nutrition. It's way easier to sell a pill than it is to sell a lifestyle. A balanced, healthy, holistic lifestyle. So that's my review and critique of one of the main regulatory agencies that we look up to for supplying critical information, expertise, and truth. After reviewing this information for yourself, what do you think? Do you still trust these guys? Do you put your faith in them? I appreciate you all watching this and listening and sharing your feedback. Tap into true nutrition. Tap into true health. I wish you all the very best.